Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. I found this article by Israel 365 News. It was just recently published called Ring of Fire Solar Eclipse to Appear as Rosh Hashanah Begins. And it points out a couple things that I didn't realize before that are really interesting. And then we're going to look at what Elder Stevenson has said about eclipses in the October 2017 General Conference. And then we're going to fast forward to the April 2024 General Conference where he talked about bridges. And then after that, we're going to look at the recent dedication of the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Temple, which was just dedicated on Sunday. And it wasn't until this article that I found out that one of the nicknames for Pittsburgh is City of Bridges, which I think is really interesting. And by the way, my friend Jen with Christian Fire Poppy, she's done a number of videos about bridges. And I told her about this article. She's probably going to make her own video about it. So subscribe to her. If you like my content, you should like her content as well. We think a lot alike. I'll put a link for her channel in the description box below. So let's go ahead and take a look at this article. Okay. As the sun sets on Israel on Wednesday, October 2nd, and Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, begins, the second solar eclipse of the year will appear in the heavens. This will be the second and final solar eclipse of the year. It will appear at precisely 1542 UTC, which corresponds to 1842 in Israel. Almost precisely as the sun sets and the holy day begins. Okay, so let's take a look at hebcal.com, which has the Gregorian calendar and the Hebrew calendar, so you can visualize this. Okay, so the Jewish New Year is going to begin on October 2nd at sundown. Okay, that's when the Jewish day begins, is at sundown. So it's saying that this upcoming eclipse is going to be taking place at the same time that the sun is going down in Israel. Okay, and Tishrei is the 7th month, but that's when they celebrate what we would think of as New Year's. In Judaism, they actually have 4 New Years, but this is the one where they actually change the date. That's why they have the new year 5785 right here. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's go back. The eclipse on October 2nd will not be visible in the continental United States or Israel, and the eclipse's path will be entirely over the Pacific Ocean, which actually it's mostly going to be over the Pacific Ocean, but it is going to go over Chile in Argentina, at least in the southern part of those countries. Okay, so this eclipse is the second one for the year, but then the article says the first eclipse appeared on April 8th, known as the Great American Eclipse of 2024. It is important to note that April 8th was the eve of the new moon, marking the beginning of the Hebrew month Nisan, referred to in the Torah as the first month. The month is considered auspicious as it contains the holiday of Pesach, or Passover. Okay, so what does all this mean? Let's take a look at Hebcal. Okay, here's April 2024. And so the new month of Nisan, which is the first month on the Hebrew calendar, was on the 9th. And the day before is when the first eclipse of this year took place. Now, this was the eclipse that was after General Conference. And this is the eclipse where the path of totality went over the Kirtland Temple. And I was there for that. If you missed this video, you may want to check it out. It was a very special occasion. We were able to both experience the eclipse and also tour the Kirtland Temple. This was just a month after the church had purchased it. So it was a very special moment in my life being able to experience this. It was incredible. Okay, so now let's add a little bit more context to this. So this is a graphic that Rabbi Gerfine sent me. You can see my interviews with him in my playlist called Special Guests. Okay. So he sent this to me because I had asked him a number of questions about the different tribes of Israel. And in Judaism, they associate, for each month of the year, they associate a tribe of Israel with that month. So here are the 3 spring months: Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. And just like how the Israelites marched in the wilderness during the 40 years, you had all the tribes. They were in groups of 3, and for each group of 3, you would have a leader tribe. So this group of 3 would be Judah, Zebulun, and Issachar, and Judah was the leader. On the calendar, Nisan, which is associated with Judah, is the first month of spring. So it's like Judah brings in the spring. Reuben brings in the summer. Ephraim, associated with Tishrei, the 7th month, brings in the fall. So what happened this year is that we had 2 solar eclipses, and each of them started the day before the first day of, these 2 months. The first month of the year, Nisan, and then the first month of the year, Tishrei. So the four New Years is you have Nisan, which is numbered the first month, and then you have a new year for animals. You have a new year for the tree, and then you have what we would think of as the new year in the 7th month. So the 2 main New Years with these 2 really prominent tribes, Judah and Ephraim. This year, there was an eclipse on the day before their respective months. Does that make sense? Let's go back to the article because there's more. Okay, so it is important to note that April 8th was the eve of the new moon, marking the beginning of the Hebrew month Nisan, referred to in the Torah as the first month. The month is considered auspicious as it contains the holiday of Pesach. So let's talk about the Jewish holidays. Okay, so this is on my spreadsheet called Judaism Feasts, and you have these these major holidays. There's like some more aside from these, but these are like the major feasts or holidays. You have the spring feasts, and then you have the fall feasts. And these 3 fall or spring feasts, Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits, these occur in the month of Nisan. And then the fall feasts occur in the month of Tishrei. Okay, so these are like the feasts that would correspond to Judah in the month of Judah, and these are the ones that would correspond with Ephraim in Ephraim's month, Tishrei. Does that make sense? So you have these eclipses that they highlight these 2 months, these 2 prominent tribes, and the Jewish holy days that fall in these months. So you see why I think that this is significant? Okay. Let's go back to the article. Okay, an annular solar eclipse was visible along a path covering parts of the United States, Mexico, and several countries in Central America and South America on October 14th, 2023, exactly 1 week after the horrific attack by Hamas on Israel. While skeptics claim this astronomical phenomenon has no spiritual significance, others note that the eclipse of 2017 that transversed the United States ushered in a catastrophic hurricane season, the global COVID epidemic, the war in Ukraine, and the horrific Hamas attack on Israel. Okay, let's take a look at the map so we get this all straight. So let's do this in order. So he first talked about the 2017 eclipse. So here's the path of totality. I think a lot of people realize that this was a significant eclipse. Now, a lot of people were fixating on the Salems, which they were saying that there were 7 Salems in the path of totality, which is not true. You have this one. So 1, 2. This one's kind of close, but it's not in the path of totality. 3, 4. This one, that's debatable. It may be in the path of totality. 5, and then 6. So a lot of Christians outside of our church saw a lot of significance in this. I don't know that I do so much. I know a lot of members of the church, we're taking the lead of the Christians and there's 7 Salems. And that's not entirely true from what I can tell. But anyway, What I thought was a lot more important is the church sites that were within the path of totality of the 2017 eclipse. Specifically, and I'll point out that the path could not vary by very much if it was going to include these three sites. You have Adam-on-Diamond, which was just barely within the path of totality, far west, and then you have the future New Jerusalem, Independence, Missouri. Okay? So I feel like this was definitely a sign for us in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then you had the next total solar eclipse that he mentioned in the article. This one is the one that came 7 days after the October 7th attacks. This was October 14th. And what do you know? It went through Utah. Not only did it go through Utah, but let me turn on temples. It missed all the temples, except for one that was in operation, the Monticello, Utah temple. And this one right here, this white one, is the Manti, Utah temple. But at that time, it was decommissioned because it was under renovation. And of course, the Ephraim temple has not yet been dedicated. So it took the one path through the state that it could take to miss the maximum number of temples. And we're going to look at Elder Stevenson's talk because I feel like there is a symbol in this. But so it goes through Utah, misses all the temples except for one, this one that's in operation. And it was 7 days after the attack. Okay, and then the next one, the one in April. Okay, it went like this. Let me turn off temples. And again, just like the 2017 eclipse, a lot of Christians outside of our church were like, oh, there's all these cities called Nineveh within the path of totality. And they were claiming some number. Again, I don't know if it was 5 or 7 or something like that. There's only 2 that are in the path of totality. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I think there was one up here. No, there's not. Yeah, there were only 2 in the path of totality. Of course, the different YouTube videos that were coming out from these other Christian denominations, they were like, well, they were including like the areas near the path of totality, which is fine. I'm not going to say what the rules are. Like, you know, if that's significant to somebody, then great. For me personally, I don't think it's as important or as specific as a sign as if they had all been in the path of totality, because that's very, very unlikely. But turning the Ninevehs off and turning the church sites back on, yeah, the path of totality for that eclipse went over the Sacred Grove, which is where this dispensation began. It went over Fayette, New York, which is where the church was established. It went over Hiram, Ohio, which used to be church headquarters. And then it went over the Kirtland Temple. And again, I have this video if you want to check it out. It was really cool. And it was the day after General Conference, by the way. So a month after the church purchased the Kirtland Temple, there was this eclipse where the path of totality went over the Kirtland Temple. So I'm sorry, but you can't tell me that that's not significant. So you have all these really significant church sites that are actually in the path of totality of the 2017 eclipse and the 2024 eclipse. And then the 2023 eclipse went through Utah, missing all the temples except for one. So in my mind, all these eclipses are specifically for the church. Now, the one that's coming up in October, unfortunately, these right here, these like red lines, this is a file that I got from NASA. It's called a KMZ file. They don't have one out for the eclipse that's coming up, but it's going to go like something like this. It's going to go from like Hawaii kind of down like this, and then it's going to cross right here over Chile and Argentina. Okay. So that one, I'm not necessarily viewing it as a church specific eclipse like these ones were. Oh, and before I continue on, I am aware, I've talked about this many times. People have noted that when you look at the shape of these three eclipses, the paths of totality, it looks like the letter Aleph in Paleo Hebrew. So not the modern block script that we think of as Hebrew. You have the old Hebrew. It's basically the same as Phoenician. So in Paleo Hebrew, this is what the first letter of the alphabet looked like, Aleph. And then later on, I think in the 40s, there's going to be, an X over the Red Sea. So some people are like, oh, this is like Aleph and in Tav, or like Alpha and Omega, basically, the first and last letter. So I'm not really thinking about that too much because I feel like the second coming is going to be closer. So I'll get more excited about that when that time comes, if that's how it plays out. But you can see why it really seems like these eclipses are important. So going back to this whole thing, I feel like these are two very Jewish specific eclipses. Again, one the day before the first day of Nisan, and one the day before the first day of Tishrei, the month of Judah, the month of Ephraim, and the two Jewish New Years. That's really weird, and I don't think that it's coincidence. I feel like 2024 is a big year. I've said that before. I feel like 2020 and 2024, big years. So I'm not going to list all the reasons, but let's continue on. Let's see. There's like one more thing here. Just a little one sentence I wanted to read. Astronomical phenomena are often discussed in Jewish literature as accompanying the Messiah. So that's how some of them are viewing this and how they view signs in the heavens. And they should, because they are signs for the Messiah. They just don't realize that he's coming for the second time. Okay, let's look at what Elder Stevenson said in October 2017 General Conference in his talk called Spiritual Eclipse. On August 21st of this year, two rare events occurred that captured the attention of people around the world. The first was the 90th birthday celebration of our beloved prophet, President Thomas S. Monson. At the time, I was on assignment in the Pacific area and was thrilled that the saints of Australia, Vanuatu, I think that's how you pronounce it, New Zealand, and French Polynesia were not only aware of his personal milestone, but they also rejoiced in celebrating it. Of course, President Monson, mindful of those desiring to wish him happy birthday, described an ideal birthday gift. Now think about this. After having experienced President Nelson's 100th birthday and what he asked for, so this is President Monson's 90th, and we just had President Nelson's 100th, and this was President Monson's birthday wish. Find someone who is having a hard time or is ill or lonely and do something for them. That's all I would ask. So that's very similar to President Nelson's 99 plus 1. Reach out to the one, right? In this case, though, he specified hard time, ill, or lonely. All right. Continuing, we love and sustain you, President Monson. Okay, solar eclipse. The other rare and heavenly event occurred on the same day. I should have highlighted that. So here we have an apostle taking note that on the same day that President Monson turned 90, you have this eclipse. On the same day, and captivating millions worldwide, was a total solar eclipse. This was the first time such an eclipse had marched across the entire United States in 99 years. Again, that number 99, when you think about it as a percentage, 99 is nearly complete. You just have one more percentage point and then it's complete. It's 100. Okay. Have you ever seen a solar eclipse? Perhaps I could describe this in greater detail. A total solar eclipse occurs when the moon moves between the Earth and the sun, almost completely blocking any light from the sun's surface. The fact that this can happen is a marvel to me. If you imagine the sun as the size of a common bicycle tire, the moon in comparison would scarcely be the size of a small pebble. Okay, so here's a picture of what that looks like. How is it possible that the very source of our warmth, light, and life could be so greatly obscured by something comparatively insignificant in size. Although the sun is 400 times larger than the moon, it is also 400 times farther away from the Earth. From the Earth's perspective, this geometry makes the sun and moon appear to be the same size. When the two are aligned just right, the moon seems to obscure the entire sun. Friends and family of mine who were in the zone of total eclipse described how light was replaced by darkness, the stars appeared, and the birds quit singing. The air became chilly, as temperatures in an eclipse can decrease by more than 20 degrees Fahrenheit or 11 degrees Celsius. And by the way, that was really surreal. When I was there, like you could feel it up to about like an hour before the eclipse started. And I noticed it. Like you could, in my case, I noticed it as soon as it started happening. It was very strange feeling. Okay. They described a sense of awe, astonishment, and even anxiety, knowing an eclipse brings certain hazards. However, they all exercised care to prevent permanent eye damage or eclipse blindness during the eclipse event. Safety was made possible because they wore glasses equipped with special filtered lenses that protected their eyes from any potential harm. The analogy: in the same manner that the very small moon can block the magnificent sun, is extinguishing its light and warmth. Pay attention to this. A spiritual eclipse can occur when we allow minor and troublesome obstructions, those we face in our daily lives, to get so close that they block out the magnitude, brightness, and warmth of the light of Jesus Christ and his gospel. Elder Neely Maxwell took this analogy even further when he stated, quote, "Even something as small as a man's thumb, when held very near the eye, can blind him to the very large sun. Yet the sun is still there. Blindness is brought upon the man by himself. When we draw other things too close, placing them first, we obscure our vision of heaven." End quote. So, of course, that would be referencing things like idolatry, where we don't have our priorities straight. We care too much about the world, our worldly pursuits and possessions, our social status, things like that. You know, we're playing the game of life and not thinking about our spiritual welfare. Being distracted by politics and contention and divisiveness and stuff like that. So this could be one of the big signs of these eclipses. We're living in a time where people are just becoming less and less and less spiritual. And there's more and more things blocking their view of heaven, of God, of Christ. All right, continuing. Clearly, none of us want to purposefully obscure our vision of heaven or allow a spiritual eclipse to occur in our lives. Let me share some thoughts that may assist us in preventing spiritual eclipse from causing us permanent spiritual damage. And I'll just end right there. So it's really interesting. I feel like this is very applicable. This may even be the analogy or the lesson of these eclipses, possibly among other things. But he notes that this eclipse occurred on the same day as President Monson's birthday, his 90th birthday. It's interesting that it was on August 21st. 21 is 3 sevens. Okay. I have this quote saved on my quotes A through Z spreadsheet under Eclipse, which is currently row 129. You can access my spreadsheets anytime. The link is in the description box below. Okay, then this most recent general conference, he talked about bridges. Now, I'm interested in this because I have this spreadsheet that I used to have it called President Nelson's bookends, because we were noticing these different events where you'd have one that would happen early in his presidency, or maybe just a little bit before his presidency, and then a corresponding event later on, here closer to the end, like bookends. And that's how I viewed it. I was like, oh, well, maybe this period between these two eclipses, the 2017 eclipse and the the April 8th, 2024 eclipse, maybe it's like bookends and like this is a period of time where something very significant is happening. And I think that's true. And I have a bunch of other things here. I'm not going to explain them all, but I've noted a number of them. So just all these, what seem like bookends, but now I've changed the name of it to bridges because of this talk. Okay. So he shows a bunch of pictures of bridges and he says, whenever traveling, we have little time for sightseeing. However, when possible, I spend a few moments in a particular passion. I have an interest in architecture and design and a special fascination with bridges. Suspension bridges amaze me. Whether it's the Rainbow Bridge in Tokyo, the Singma Bridge in Hong Kong, the Tower Bridge in London, or others I have seen, I marvel at the engineering genius built within these complicated structures. Now pay attention to this. Bridges take us places we otherwise would not be able to go. Now, I feel like these things that we're looking at, I do think that they're signs, and I think that they're taking us places that we want to go. They're like a symbol of us going somewhere that we want to go. In this case, from this old world that we're living in for this last 6,000 years into the millennial world, the second coming in the millennium. Let me continue. Later on, he says, recently, a conference assignment took me to California where I once again crossed the iconic Golden Gate Bridge, regarded as an engineering wonder of the world. This monumental structure intertwines beautiful form, functional purpose, and masterful engineering. It is a classic suspension bridge with bookend towers. So this word stuck out to me as soon as he said it. Bookend towers, supported by massive piers. Okay, so I think that this is actually the proper way to think about these signs. Signs typically point you to the future. Not always. I have a spreadsheet showing that signs can happen as something else is happening, and that's the point of the sign. So, for example, when Christ was crucified, there was the 3 days of darkness in the Americas. There was an earthquake that tore the veil of the temple in Jerusalem. So there's signs that can point to something that's happening right now. There's also signs that can point you to the past. I have some examples of that, but it seems like much more of the time they point to the future. Okay. So if we think of like these as the eclipses, like the two main eclipses, 2017 and 2024, well, you know, if it's like a timeline, we've passed that. We're probably like right here. I'm not making any predictions, but you know, just think of it maybe that way. It's like we're crossing this bridge and we have these two big signs, then we have like smaller ones in between, but these are the two big bookend events. I think that's one way that we can think about it. And then, yeah, to finish off, you know, we just on Sunday, we had the dedication of the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Temple by Elder Uchtdorf. Let me just read the parts that I highlighted. The temple is located about 20 miles from the Ohio-Pennsylvania border in a suburban area north of Pittsburgh called Cranberry Township. Its landscaping includes a granite bridge. So they included a bridge because it's a nod to Pittsburgh's recognition as the city of bridges for its 446 bridges. Yeah, that's a lot of bridges. The bridge on the temple grounds connects the new house of the Lord to a nearby meeting house. Similarly, quote from Elder Uchtdorf, the house of the Lord is here to make covenants which connect us to heaven. These bridges from one side to the other, from earth to heaven, are real. So that's interesting too, looking at temples as bridges. So that's pretty much all that I have for you. I don't know that I necessarily take this as a big sign, but it's just interesting. You know, when we look at President Nelson's, where is it? His bridges, like we have the eclipses, we have the begin with the end in mind. We have, I'm not going to try and explain that, but we have this right here with the missionary work. We have these super blue moons, foxes seen on the Temple Mount, asteroids, solar flares, places called paradise that have burnt down, and then these NATO exercises, the largest of their kind. First it was this one in 2018, and then there was an even bigger one January of this year. And there's probably more. So, you know, let's just wait and see what happens, but I feel like that could be it. And on the other side of all those events, well, we have this temple in a city nicknamed the City of Bridges. It's just interesting stuff. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.